folks. Welcome along to another Monday night Sonar Masterclass. Thank you for joining us. This evening, we're with Matt Hooper, who's our Simrad guru from all the way across the ditch there in New Zealand. Mate, must be a bit late over there and a bit cool as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is a little bit, Greg. It's not too bad though, and I'm always up for talking about our product and how it helps with your fishing. So glad to be here.
We're in for a big session, mate. I'm sure we're going to have plenty of people keen to find out about the Evo3, which is what we're going to focus tonight's chat on. But mate, while we're getting ready, while we're letting people come into the room, let's just have a bit of a chat about you and your journey and what brought you to being here tonight. So, folks, before we do that, if you're coming into the room now, you're interested in asking questions of Matt, you'll see on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're coming from, you can just enter questions there in the chat and we'll see those come up and we'll be able to answer them. As you come into the room, let us know where you're coming from. Tell us your name, where you're coming from, so that we know that you can hear us okay, and that way we can respond to you in due course. But Matt, tell us your story, mate. You've been with Navico for a fair while. You did a lot of training stuff I see in your CV.
Yeah, that's right. I started about 10 years ago with Navico as a technical support guy on the phones. Prior to that, I'd worked for the distributor for Simrad and BNG in New Zealand, and so from there, I kind of made my way through the ranks a little bit, and I ended up as the global service director. Training director, and so I spent a lot of time doing training internationally. So it was a really cool part of the job. I got to go all over the world, training different people on our product and how to use it. And then from there, I kind of moved into a sales and product management role. And so I had a little bit to do with designing some of the product as well, which was really fantastic to get involved at that level and be part of the team that puts a product together. Is really amazing. And then from there, I've kind of moved into a couple of management roles, and now I'm kind of leading the team over in APAC here internationally. So yeah, I'm the COO for Navico Asia Pacific.
Excellent. So quite a journey. You've done a lot of Sonar stuff. Are you a fisher as well, mate?
Yeah, 100%. I can't claim to be the best fisherman in the world, that's for sure, but I'm probably one of the keenest. And that was definitely a perk with the travel that I did do. I got to fish in a lot of different countries. So I spent a little bit of time in the US in Florida and up and around that area. And then I've done some stuff over in Europe and obviously in APAC here as well. My sales team are pretty good at getting trips out, and so any time that's kind of popped up and I've had the opportunity, I'll throw my hand up. So we had a really awesome trip beginning of this year to Vanuatu, which was fantastic. Hard fishing, but really good time.
Targeting what species, mate?
A little bit of a mix. I mean, for me, it was dogtooth tuna was the one that made my trip for me, that's for sure. Yep. But we got a real blend, quite a few sharks, so not really the target species, but a little bit of bycatch. But we were able to bring them in and drop them off, so it wasn't too bad. We had a really, really good time over there.
And what's your favourite fishing destination, mate? You've been all over the world, but where would you, if you could go back again, where would you go?
To be honest, I'm a true blue Kiwi. So just out here in the Hauraki Gulfs, it's pretty magic fishing in summer. There's lots of good fish out there, and it's a great place to be. When it's sunny and warm, and the sea temperature's high enough to swim. It's a great spot. Yeah.
So snapper and kingfish are the targets.
Yeah, that's mostly it. Yeah, definitely snapper. Yeah. There are some great kingfish spots, but let's just say I haven't been overly successful in that realm.
Well, there's always plenty of time, mate. It sounds like you managed to juggle plenty of opportunities to give it a crack, so I'm sure they'll turn up. Now, folks, we haven't got any chat coming through yet, so if you are tuning in, you've only just come in, say hello to us in the chat box on Facebook or YouTube. Let us know you can hear us. Post any questions. Let us know where you're coming in from, and we're going to have a bit of a chat this evening about the Simrad Evo3 units, mate. So tell us a little bit about the Evo3s. How have they evolved? Hello, Matt. Have we still got you there? Looks like we might have lost Matt temporarily. across the ditch there. The connection might have broken. Hello, Matt. I'm not sure if you can hear me. You might need to. If you can hear me, you might need to close out and come back into the room, mate, because we seem to have lost you at this end. Bear with us, folks. I'm not Matt Hooper, of course. I'll take that graphic down. So, folks, this is the joys of live streaming, of course. Matt will be back with us in just a moment, I'm sure. But, folks, if you're coming into this live stream, we are going to be talking about the Evo3 Simrad units, and I'm hoping that we're going to have some great questions. We've had a few sent in via email and via Facebook prior to this live stream. So, if you're one of those, hopefully we'll get to your question, or we will get to your question once Matt's back online. If you're just coming into this stream, then please, if you've got questions, put them in the chat box. If you haven't got questions, but you want to let us know that you're there and that you can hear us, then it'd be great if you could just type into the chat box as well. Let us know where you're coming in from while we try and overcome this technical glitch. Let's see if we can get Matt back online. Matt,
G'day, there we go. Technology in its best. Yep.
We lost you.
Not sure what happened there. Yeah, no worries.
That's all right. So we were going to talk about the Evo3, mate. Tell us about these units. What is it? You know, what is the Evo3 and how have they developed?
Yeah, so it's kind of our premium offering from Simrad. So the NSSevo3s is our latest release. It's a really capable machine. Ranges from 7-inch screen right through to a 16. So there's a 9 and a 12 in between. It's a dual channel sonar machine. So there's a chart plotter as per standard, and then the real power of that product is in its sonar and its capabilities. So it runs 2 independent sonar channels, and they support up to 1 kilowatt transducers on each channel. And we also have the ability with Ethernet to connect it to our other sonar modules as well, and that gives it some extra function and features. So you can connect it to our S5100, which is our performance fishing module, and that'll do up to a 3 kilowatt machine. So that'll run the big R series transducers from EMR. There's also the ability to connect our award-winning radars, so our Halo radars in particular. And you put all of that together and you've got a really powerful fishing machine. So you can use the chart plotter and our CMAP reveal charts to find all the little cracks and crevices and all the bathy areas that hold fish. And then of course you've got the sonar to take a look at that, and then you've got our radars as well, which you can use for searching out birds or avoiding weather. So there's lots of kind of functions that you can use from that one machine. It does a whole bunch of other stuff. We have a close alignment with a number of engine manufacturers. So Mercury in particular, you can connect to a Mercury engine, and by doing that, you get a fully integrated vessel with those engines. So you can, depending on the type of motor, but it'll allow to do things like trolling control. Your autopilot steering's all done through there as well. So it just becomes the hub of the boat.
Amazing units, and you think back 10 years ago, and this sort of thing was just unimaginable.
Yeah, and what we did have then was really hard to use, and nowadays, that's a big leap forward for us, is making it super easy and simple, and that's the real key to it. A lot of people that buy our product, can be new to boating and not really understanding how to interact with those products, but we make it as easy as we possibly can for them.
Excellent. Now, Matt, I'm just watching the chat feed here, and we have absolutely nothing coming through, and I refuse to believe that we have nobody watching. I guarantee that is not the case, and so I suspect I did see a message that some chat functions were playing up on Facebook at the moment. So, folks, if you are messaging us, I apologise that we haven't acknowledged you, that we haven't answered your questions. But what I'm going to do in just a moment, Matt's got a great presentation that he can go through. So I'm going to switch over to Matt and let him start to run that. What I'll do is I will manually go to each of the Facebook channels and I will monitor those. And it may just be that I have to translate the questions across to you, Matt, as they come up. So
easy as Greg, no problem.
I'll switch over to you, mate, for your presentation. Do you want me to turn on your screen?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Drive. Yeah, let's turn on your screen share. Let's turn me off. Shrink me out of the wrong one.
Okay, well, it looks like I might have lost Greg, but we'll continue on anyway. So the purpose of what we're trying to do tonight was just take you through some of our sonar settings and ways to interact with an NSS Evo3 product or Evo3s. So I'll go through a number of the kind of commonly used features and try to talk to you a little bit about how they affect the sonar performance and how you can interact with them to personalize the way that you view your sonar. So we'll cover our gain controls. We've got a manual and auto gain with a biasing function. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Our color controls, our noise rejection, time variable gain. I'll go into a little bit of detail about what that actually means, what that acronym means. How to control your scroll speed and your ping speed, as well as our color palettes, and there's a variety of those. I'll talk a little bit about A-scope and our color mark and color erase features. And then I'll kind of finish up on bottom lock and zoom split screens. At any time, please reach out with questions if we've got those, and Greg can forward those through to me. The other thing that I do have running at the moment is actually a machine live on my desk. So if anybody's got specific questions about how to use a feature, I can bring that screen up and take you through it and show you, which menu to go to or which area of a menu to take a look at. So the first thing I'll talk about is our gain control. So on a sonar, this is a pretty common control. And if you think about a radio or a stereo system in your car, gain is really a lot like your volume control. So the more you bring it up, the louder things get, or in this case, the sonar image gets brighter and shows more detail on the screen. I did say we had an auto and a manual mode. Most of the time, our recommendation is just to run the machine in auto. But there are situations where a manual control would be beneficial. So when it's running in auto, every time it fires and sends a signal through the transducer, it's measuring the signal to noise ratio, and it's taking a look at what's going on from the signal returns, and it's making really small adjustments to try and peak out and get the most efficient picture for you. In manual control, it doesn't do that. So it just sets a set value that you select, and it stays set on that. So if you get deeper, or if you're moving into an area where there's a lot of wash or noise in the water, then in manual gain control, you won't be able to. You'd have to manually adjust each time for the corresponding change in performance. Whereas if you leave it in automatic, it'll just take care of itself. So just to highlight what I mean by that. On the right-hand side here, you'll see an image of really high gain. So this is where we've set it in automatic, but we've biased it, or we've made an adjustment to the automatic setting of +6. So the picture on the left is in what we deem to be a sort of normal configuration with auto. And then the picture on the right is where we've pushed up that gain. Now, it's a really cool feature because it means that you can fine-tune the image to something that you're really happy with. And if the conditions change, the auto feature will look after that for you. It continue to make those adjustments. If the water got deeper, or like I said, it got noisier, it would make those adjustments to get the best image on screen. And you can go the other way. So if you want to remove noise and clutter out of the screen, you can reduce the gain as well. And so you can see here, it's a really sharply defined picture. You're probably losing some of your smaller targets by doing that. But if you're only after the bigger fish, then that's definitely a way to run. And so that's what those gain controls are. You'll also see, it might be a little bit hard on the screen, but there's actually a couple of little black arrows. And that's where the kind of normal spot is, so to speak. So as you move it up and down, those black lines will stay at the kind of optimum position. So you can make those adjustments and then return it back to a normal value really, really easily. If there's no questions on gain control, I'll move on to the color controls. So the way that I always recommend for someone to interact with the sounder or set it up is to start with gain and set it up so you've got a picture that you're comfortable with. What color allows us to do is to just richen up the targets, or make them a more contrasting color, so to speak. So by default, we normally run at about 76% of color. And so that's this image on the left-hand side. On the right here, you can see as we've increased the color value, the targets get a deeper shade of red, and they start to stand out a little bit more. And so the larger targets will show up as these large red areas on screen. So that can also help you identify different fish species, because some fish obviously are more dense or have a larger swim bladder, and you'll get a larger return from those. And by increasing that color gain value, that'll make those targets really start to stand out and pop with those deep red colors with this particular color palette. To go into a little bit more detail about what I mean by that, this is our kind of color range on the left-hand side here, from nothing through to 9, which is our deep red. And then across the bottom, what we're saying is different target strengths. So at color 70, if we bring a fish in here and he's kind of a mid-range target strength, we draw a line up to our color 70 line and project it across, that's going to show up as one of these kind of light blue fish arches. As we increase the color value, so I push it up here, color 76, we project that up and take it across. And what that means is that same target is now going to present more of these yellows and greens, okay? And if I take it one step further and go to color 80, it's going to richen it up even more. And this is where I start to see those reds and deeper colors popping in as well. So by making those adjustments to color, all it's going to do is make those targets that you're looking at become more clear and bright. Often there's a little bit of confusion about gain and color. And the difference between the two is gain sets the overall volume, if you will, or target intensity, and then the color allows you just to fine tune it. So it's a really good way just to dial it in that last couple of percent. Our Sonar engineers have done a really good job at setting some values as default. So that 76 is kind of somewhere in the middle. And so as you get more comfortable with the product, what we recommend you do is just try making some small adjustments. You'll also see with color, we continue to hold those little black arrows or markers on where the most optimum position is. So what I'll do now is just show you this live on a machine here. So the machine that I've got at the moment is running in a simulation mode, but I can still show you the net effect of making those changes. So the first one I'll do is I'll change the gain control for us, and we'll take a look at that. So you can see now it's in gain auto, and it's at a normal gain value. But as I increase it, you can start to see a little bit more clutter coming in, and some of those smaller targets pop up. So if we take it all the way through to gain 6, you can get a picture that looks quite similar to what I had on screen just moments ago. And the same thing when we start to reduce it back down. Okay, back to normal. And then if I want to, I can tweak it out by reducing the gain a little bit more. So that's the gain control in action. If I press down on our rotary control, what I can do is bring up our color marker as well. And you can see at the moment, like I said before, 76 is our kind of default. But as I start to increase that, you'll see those targets on screen start to deepen up in the reds, or showing as a harder or more dense target. And so again, it just helps you with getting that really contrasting view where you can see the targets and make them really pop or stand out on screen. Like I said before, if I wind this right up, you can see those little black markers on screen now as well, just below the big orange box. And that's our reference point, or our suggested value. So if I bring it back down again, once we hit around about 76, you'll see that line will start to line back up with the little black markers on the side there. Cool. So that's the two kind of very basic controls, I guess you'd say, Greg, color and gain control.
Now, Matt, just to let you know, we are live. Everything's going fine, and we've got quite a lot of people that have tuned in. Folks, for those at home watching this, I apologise, but it seems Facebook's having a bit of a problem, so I'm just trying to get into the chat manually now on each of the Facebook pages where we're going live. So bear with us. We'll continue on. Luckily, Matt's got a presentation that he can work through, and I'll try and relay those questions to him as I can get to them. So Matt, we do have a few questions coming up, so let me know when you want to pause the presentation and we can switch over and go through a few other questions.
Greg, well, we can take a wee break for now and add a couple of those on ahead. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, let's turn this off. Let's bring ourselves back on the screen.
No
so
problem.
we've got Wayne. His question is, how long does it take the new tech to filter down to lower price units?
Yep. So it's always something that we try to do, and in fact, you would have seen it. We launched some products, the Cruise series product, and also the Go series as well, which are those lower end Simrad products. But also we have obviously our Lowrance brand as well. And so there was a function that we released called Fish Reveal. And originally that was intended to be in the higher end products or mid-range in the Elite and HDS Live series. And what that does is kind of joins two sonar images, one from our high definition Downscan and our traditional sonar. And we actually made that very quickly available in our lower end product as well. So where we think there's a feature that really helps a fisherman perform better, we try to get that into all of our products as quickly as we can. There are some restrictions. The power outputs is a big part of it. So what you'll probably notice mostly is that as you start to pay more for a product, you'll see that it has more power and more output, as well as having slightly better screens. But there is a direct cost between them. And so that's why as you see the price increasing for the product, you'll see that they'll get a brighter, more intense screen with more pixel count. And you'll typically see an increase in the sonar power as well. So there are some limits. Unfortunately, we can't get everything into the low end product. It just doesn't make financial sense. But we do try. So if there's software features that we've developed that we can stretch across more than just one range, then we definitely try to do that.
Yeah, cool. Now, Greg Miller is asking, he knows that this presentation is specific to the Evo unit, but does the same apply to the S2009?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep. So the S2009 is our standalone sounder. It's more commercially kind of based, I guess you'd say. We've put a lot of functions and features in there that were more aligned with our commercial fishing customers. It's a super product. We've actually had really good success. In fact, Australia and New Zealand are the world leaders for selling that product. So it has a really big following down here. People really appreciate having the large 9-inch screen vertically rather than horizontally, and that gives you a much higher pixel count per target return. So it makes it really good for finding fish hard on the bottom and that kind of thing. So yeah, the S2009 gain, color, all of those functions are the same between that product and the NSS product. The main difference is it's just a sounder. That's what it's been designed for. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mike Const is asking, what's the recommendation for finding bait over the shelf, 200 or 50, and why?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I haven't got too much in here about transducers, but I do have a little piece at the end, which we can, if we see how we go for time, Greg, but I can talk all night. It's realistically what you're probably trying to do with bait is I'd actually use them both. So with our NSS product, you can run both channels simultaneously. So if you have a transducer that supports both frequencies, I'd split screen it and run them both. So the 50 will give you a much wider beam width normally. And again, there are some caveats to that. Our transducer partner, MR, have made some wide beam, high frequency transducers as well. But yeah, realistically, when you're looking for bait, you want to cover as much seafloor or water column as possible. And normally the lower frequency transducers have a wider beam width. However, if you're targeting small fish, higher frequencies have some benefits as well, and they tend to stand out. So using the combination of both is actually the best option, I think.
All right. Now, we've got a few questions about distinguishing the bottom type rock and sand. So Ben Buckley's the most recent one. When adjusting gain color, can that be used to identify rock or sand?
Yeah, 100%. So what I'll do, Greg, I'll just pop the live unit back up again on screen here. And I'll just talk to that a little bit. So the thickness of the bottom gives you an indication of how hard the bottom is and how much reflection you get. So if you see a lot of really deep red, that typically means you've got a hard bottom. Now, whether that be a bit of rock or some hard packed sand, that'll stand out. If you've got a muddy bottom, what you'll see is these color kind of ranges will be fairly rapid. You won't get a big dark red section like this. It'll just bleed out to the lighter colors more quickly, and that's because the reflection from the bottom is less intense from a loosely packed mud or even some types of sand. You won't get as strong a return coming back. So that's probably the quickest way to tell is just looking at the intensity of the bottom. You're looking for those really bright, in this case, deep reds, which tells that it's a really hard bottom and you're going to get a lot of returns back. Another little trick that you could probably use as well is when you do have a full page of echo like this, if you set your range to a manual value, and you can see here there's actually a double echo. And again, that's a really good indication that you've got a really hard bottom. So if you manually set the range to roughly twice the depth that you're seeing on screen, if you're seeing this double echo come through, that's a good indicator that you've got a really hard bottom, or rock, or a densely packed sand, and that'll give you a little bit of a hint again on what the bottom composition is.
Yeah, good stuff. Mike Bowman's asking, does the Simrad NSSevo3s have the same live mapping option, as on the Garmin?
Yep. No, so with the Simrad products, we've opted not to put in the live sonar at this stage. Part of the reason for that is because we want to use that to. Actually, there's probably two parts to that question. So there is the ability to do live charting, but what we don't do is use that for building our own charts. And the reason for that is our tidal offsets. And so what we want to do before we start using any of that data to create real charts for us is we want to be able to validate it really well. And so at this stage, that's one of the restrictions we have. We do have it in the Lowrance product, and that's typically because with Lowrance we've normally targeted more of the inland guys or guys that are inshore where there's perhaps a little bit less of an effect.
Yep, cool. The questions keep coming, guys. Now, as I said earlier on, I do apologise. We're not able to bring them up on the screen, and it's pretty hard to keep up with them as they're coming through the feed here on several different pages. But keep them coming. If we don't answer you straight away, put them up again. Just keep going until you catch us and we answer your question. So Doug Reed's asking, mate, screen delamination was an issue for the Evo 2. Has it been addressed in the Evo 3?
Yeah, 100%. So that was that kind of technology was relatively new in the development phases, and you probably have seen as well, it wasn't just our product that has suffered from that. So pretty much every other manufacturer have had a similar problem. And part of that was learning the process on being able to bond the LCD screens onto the glass. And in consumer electronics, they don't normally do that. And obviously for our products and our competitors, it's a challenging environment being out in the open like that, and particularly direct UV light. Originally, we had some issues with getting the adhesive compound that we used to stay stable for a long period of time. But that is definitely something that we've fixed now. We've spent a lot of money to get that 100% right. So yeah, that's definitely been addressed. We've not had any problems to date with any of the 3 or Generation 3 NSS or any of the HDS product either.
Yeah. David Gregory's asking, is the Evo 3s able to do the Genesis mapping and recording like the lives, or will it be able to do it later with updates?
Yeah, so it's definitely a feature that we've recognised as being quite important. What you will have noticed in many situations now is what we're trying to do is improve our proper cartography as well. So the CMAP Reveal product, we've definitely taken some leaps forward with that, and had the ability to get full bathymetric data and show it, real life. Like the feedback we've had from that product has been incredible, actually. So at this stage, the Genesis Live, we will bring that feature to Simrad 100%, but we just want to make sure that we're doing all the right things from a safety perspective by having those tidal corrections built into the machines properly.
All right. Now, mate, I think we've got a little bit of a lull in the questions here. I know another couple coming through. So, Joe Soda, are you going to talk about the Halo 24 tonight or radar?
I can do. It wasn't on the presentation material that I've got, but I certainly can talk to that if you do have some questions. I've got no problems covering off that product as well.
Yeah, so if you've got specific questions, Joe, give us a shout. Otherwise, you can always get in touch with Matt after this is over as well. And I'm sure, maybe not this evening, but I'm sure tomorrow he'll be happy to answer your questions. It's a bit late over there in New Zealand. So Cliff Cole's asking, can you get real-time rip charts overlay on the screen of the Evo 3?
That's a good question. I don't think we've got integration with RipChart as it currently stands. There are some ways to kind of work around that, I guess. You can show JPEG images on our products. So if you were to save it on your computer, a particular area that you wanted to have on file, so to speak, if you save that as a JPEG, then you can actually load it on the machine and display it on screen that way. But it wouldn't be as a full chart, so to speak. But that's where I would definitely urge you to take a look at our CMAP Reveal product. It's pretty special and very similar to what the RipChart product is as well.
Okay. Now Joe's come back. His question about the radar is that he can't mark birds over 4 kilometres.
Yep, and it's a Halo 24 dome.
Halo 24.
I think that's what he mentioned. Yes. Yep. So there's a lot of different ways to look for birds. Obviously, we do have a bird mode in the machines, and they are a notoriously difficult beast to track with radar. So on a commercial fishing vessel, for instance, they'll use a 50 or 60 kilowatt radar. A Halo 24 is equivalent to about a 4 kilowatt radar. So whilst we can definitely see birds, and I've used it out in the Hauraki Gulf. Anything along like 4 kilometres, I guess it's a couple of miles. That's a reasonable expectation for a dome radar to be able to track birds. If you're looking for birds out beyond that, that's when we start to talk to using an open array radar to spot them at longer ranges. But if you've got a large flock of diving like gannets or gulls, you should definitely see those at a couple of miles with a dome radar.
Cool. Now, guys, we've got a flood of questions coming through. They're coming through so fast that Facebook's only showing me the last few that have come through. So, as I said, keep putting them up. We'll keep trying to work through them as best we can. If your question's not answered, we'll come back to it. So, Guy Moffat's asking, does the Evo 3s run a full 1 kilowatt on both channels when run at the same time?
Yeah, it does. So what it does do, though, is it alternately pings. So it'll fire on one side and then fire on the other. And there's a charging time it takes for it to be able to do that. If you're wanting to run it beyond that and have a little bit more flexibility in the ping rates, that's where we use our S5100, which is that performance sonar module. And that's been designed to take those much larger transducers up to 3 kilowatts with the R509. And so it just depends a little bit on your expectation. If you're doing a lot of deep dropping and you're really pushing a lot of energy into the water, then using that 5100 module is the place to go. But if you're in a little bit shallower, 300-400 feet, the NSS will eat that all day. It's when you're out, beyond probably 500-600 meters that we'd recommend moving over to 5100, and that's when you'd start to use those much bigger transducers as well.
All right. Now, Michael Hronopoulos has got a good question for us. He's saying he's running the Evo 3 through S5100 with 75 HW and 75 L through hull. He's wanting to target deep dropping species in 300 to 500 meters. Do you have any advanced specific settings that you'd use, and can you give any examples?
Yeah, 100%. So actually in the presentation that I've got here, Greg, a little bit further on, I'll talk to that a little bit more in depth. But I'm thinking he probably said S175 low rather than 75. The 75 is just a 600 watt.
Well, he said 75 low, but yeah.
Yeah, my expectation is if he's running 5100, he's probably running 175s, which are 1 kilowatt. So yeah, they absolutely, and I've got some screenshots here. I'll show you later, a little bit of sounder porn, so to speak. with some really pretty cool images that we've collected over trips that I've done, and also with some of my extended buddies that send me stuff from time to time.
Cool. So stay tuned, Michael. We're going to get back to your question with some illustrations. So, Jason, I think we're going to answer your question with some pictures as well, possibly. So Jason's asking what the CMAP Reveal product is.
Yeah, unfortunately, I because of the lockdown here in Auckland, when I went in and grabbed my my live unit to show you, I didn't grab a chart at the same time. I'll have a quick dig and see whether I've got anything. But by all means, if you send a contact to our team, we can definitely show you some images of those reveal charts.
Jump onto the Simrad Facebook page, guys, and just leave a message there. Yeah.
Or the CMAP. CMAP page as well. I think we've actually got a lot of posts on there with that CMAP Reveal product.
Yeah. Now, Ben Darby Jones, I saw your question before I could write it down. It's disappeared off the screen and Facebook won't let me get back to it. But Ben's got a question about interference, mate. So Ben, if you'd like to, you have a few specifics in there. If you'd like to post those up, perhaps Matt can have a talk to those. But I know you tried to contact me via Facebook as well with some questions. So pop that up again, mate. I'll try and catch it before it disappears this time. Matt, maybe we should.
That was actually my next presentation. Next part of the presentation.
Let's move on. Before we do, one very quick one. Bobby Griffiths is asking how accurate the Simrad inline fuel sensor is.
I'm assuming he's talking about an EP60 or the fuel sensor. Yeah, they're pretty reasonable. I've used one. I just have a small tinny actually, little 4-meter boat with a 30 on it, and I can get it down to within a litre or two. There are some settings that you need to make sure of. There's what they call a K value, or a specific fuel weight, that needs to be set up. But typically, even just out of the box, they're actually pretty hot. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, mate. Maybe we'll zap back to your presentation. I'll jot down some questions as they come up, and we'll continue to work through your slide deck. So let me bring that back up and put it in the spotlight.
Cool. Okay, so the question about noise rejection. So what I've got here is a couple of images using what we have on our machine. So we actually have a specific noise rejection function. So on the left-hand side here, what you're seeing is sonar to sonar interference. And that typically manifests itself as these sort of vertical bars. So they're normally very, very kind of frequent in the repetition, and you'll see them as these little vertical lines on screen. It looks a bit messy. And so that will tell you there's somebody else fishing near you using 200 kilohertz. Or if you've got a bigger boat, you might have two sensors on there. So it's probably worth having a look at being able to turn one off. If it is someone else fishing nearby, effectively what's happening is you're picking up their signal as well. So by increasing the noise rejection value, what happens is we change the pulse repetition frequency of our sonar. So we change the rate at which it's firing, and that helps reject or ignore some of those other returns that are coming back. The side effect of having that noise rejection set quite high is you'll see the image becomes a little bit more grainy and not quite as well defined. So there is another trick. If you're using a chip transducer, then you can actually manually adjust the frequency that you're using as well. So you can see here, both of these are set at 200 kilohertz. If you've got a chirp transducer, you can actually go in there and set it to, for instance, 175 kilohertz and just offset the frequency a little bit, and that will probably help reduce that noise as well. And there's not really any massive side effect to your sounder performance by doing that. And in fact, some guys swear by using specific frequencies for finding specific fish species. So yeah, if you talk to any fisherman that runs commercial sets, they'll often talk about frequencies that they use for hunting down specific species. So yeah,
hopefully that's answered Ben's question. He's just come back with more of a clarification of what he's after. So he's having trouble with electrical interference on arrow boat.
Gotcha. Okay, so that can be quite common as well. So there's a few questions to ask. One of them is the age of the engine that's on the boat. The other part is to ask whereabouts the transducer cable is relative to engine cabling and other electrical cabling on the boat. Because what can happen is if you've got an engine cable really close by to a transducer cable, you can get crosstalk interference which will come across. There are some ways to fix that. You can use ferrite suppressors. They're a product that you can buy from just a local electronics store like JCar. You might have seen them on your computer monitors. They're kind of a bulky looking thing that clips onto either the power cable or onto your HDMI cables, and they just clip over the top of the cable. So that's definitely one thing to look at. But the other thing is just to try and identify where the noise is coming from. So the way that I would normally do that as a technician would be to go on board, black ship the boat, so turn everything off. And then slowly turn on electronic equipment and try to identify where the noise is coming from. Sometimes it can be from things like spotlights, anything that uses switch mode power supplies. So if you've got a computer on the boat or something like that, that can cause problems. Even certain types of LED lights, they use a switch mode supply as well, and that can create problems. So that's what I would normally do is I'd just go on board, I'd power up the sounder, get what looks to be a stable picture, and then start turning things on. If it's very obvious, for instance, if you start the engine and all of a sudden you see the noise, leave it in neutral and just bring your engine RPM up and down as well, and just see whether or not that affects the image and whether or not the interference on the screen changes with that RPM change. If it's an older engine, it can be part of the spark arresting system. So, if any of you guys owned an HQ or something like that, I know I did back in the day. And I used to get a whistle on the radio as you accelerated. And, it was pretty simple. You could just fit a suppression capacitor across the power supply, and that would help as well. So there's a few different areas, but to be perfectly honest, the best thing to do is probably to reach out to one of our certified technicians and look to pay them for a couple of hours at a time to try and to nail things down for you. That's probably the best option. It's often the one that might hurt the wallet to begin with, but it's normally the outcome's a lot better. Guys that do this for a living have a lot of experience, and they can work through those kinds of things pretty easily.
Cool. So, Matt, I've got one here from Jason. He says his 2.5-year-old daughter locked him out after we'd put some beers in the bin. So he knocked on the wall with his fist to try and get back in, and it unlocked the door. So he's wondering if that's going to help when his Lowrance HDS12 seizes up.
You can give it a gentle tap.
Thanks, Jason.
The biggest thing to remember with these machines is they are just like a computer. So it's important to keep the software up to date on them. From time to time, if you've got lots and lots of waypoints on there, it's a good idea to back those up and try and reduce them as well. With an older product, it does age as well, and if you've got lots and lots of waypoints on there, that can slow the machines down. But if it's it's something that's repeated, if you've tried resetting the unit and you're still having the same problems, reach out to our service team, and they'll be more than happy to help you out. Obviously, if it's a product that's in warranty, we take care of you immediately. All of our product carries a 2-year warranty on any of the HDS or NSS product. And in fact, we offer an extended warranty as well. So product up to 5 years from date of sale. We may not give you one for free, but what we will do is offer an upgrade into something newer and more up to date. And that's definitely something that's been very popular with people that might have had a product that was 3 or 4 years old. And they've had a failure with it, and they've rung us up, and we've been able to help them out with that kind of thing.
Excellent. Now, guys, what I'm doing as we go along here, if you've put up a comment and I like it, you'll know that I've got it and I've recorded it. If it doesn't get liked, put it up again because I've missed it. So, Matt, we've got a question here from Philip De Jong. He's saying he's been running an Evo3 with an S5100 module. I can't read this because the cord's in the way, with an LHW 275 1 kilowatt transducer.
Yep.
When he's deep dropping on the move, he reads the bottom well in 500 plus meters, but when he stops, it regularly drops out and loses the bottom while they're idle. Sounder won't find the bottom back unless you come back up to 200 meters. Are there specific settings that might help to fix this?
Yeah, that's the opposite of what you'd normally see, to be perfectly honest. So when a boat's at rest, normally the sounder will perform the best because there's the least amount of noise. But there is a couple of things that I can show you. In fact, I'll do it right now. I'll just bring my live machine up. One of them is in your settings for your echo sounder, under your installation area here. There's an area that says search depth, and most of the time it should be set to unlimited. And what that means is if it does lose the bottom, it starts deep and works its way back up to reacquire the bottom. If you're fishing relatively shallow, or you don't often go past, say, 300 meters, if you set that value to 300, what it means is if it does lose the bottom, it's going to find it much more rapidly because it's not searching, out to 1,000 meters and working its way back down. It's starting at 300, working shallower. So that's definitely something to take a look at. See what your search depth value has been set to. Another way to help out sometimes with that is to manually set your range as well. The other thing to be, again, I mentioned it before, but just making sure that all of your software is up to date. Often we'll make improvements to the algorithms that we use for searching, and by having the latest software, that definitely helps in ensuring that you've got the latest and greatest from our engineering minds.
All right, the questions are just flooding in, mate. So Josh is asking about how to set up the fuel flow sender. Is that probably something we might not be able to cover tonight?
Yeah, it's a tough one to show here. Without having one in the system, it's difficult to show you how to do that. It's not a particularly difficult process. All you really need to be doing is going to your settings menu here, and what you'll find under network is this option that says sources. And if you press on that, you'll see there's an option that says auto select at the top. If you do that, it'll go off and hunt down everything that's connected on the network, and basically set it as well as we can, set it up for you. Once that's been done, you just need to choose where you want to show that information. So in the little sidebar here, if you select that and go to edit, you can choose one of the boxes, and all you'd be doing there is looking for a fuel flow, which I think normally would live under vessel. And if we scroll down here, you'll see these ones for fuel. Vessel fuel rate is probably the one that you're after.
I don't think they've been able to see. You might just need to go over that again. The screen share wasn't up. Apologies.
Okay, no problem. So you just highlight the sidebar there, so you can see the kind of orange box around it. Press on your menu key. Choose the box that you would like. So I'm going to choose this one right at the bottom that says V supply. And then that'll ask you to choose what information you want to put in there. So if you go to vessel and just scroll down, you'll see a whole bunch of fuel ones in here. What you'll probably be after is fuel rate, because that'll tell you how much you're burning in litres per hour. Or if you're wanting a fuel remaining, you'll see that down there as well. And that will basically, when you fill your boat up, you need to come into, one moment, into settings, and you'll see one here that says fuel, and you're just going to go in there and say refuel, and you're going to tell it how much gas you put in. In this case, I'm going to say that I've filled the boat up. And what that will do now is, as it's burning fuel, it'll count down the amount of fuel that you've got left in the tank. So it is important with that type of fuel flow sensor that you tell it how much fuel you put into the boat to begin with. But again, that's definitely something that you can get one of our technical guys to help you out with, or if someone's not available, you could give us a call, and our technical support team would be able to talk through that with you.
All right, sorry, mate. I'm juggling a couple of mouses and 3 computer screens and 5 Facebook feeds, and it's a bit nuts. So guys, for those who have come in a bit late, Facebook's not playing nicely with us tonight. The chat feed isn't coming all in as one stream, so I'm having to jump around between screens and Facebook pages. So we are missing a few questions. They're disappearing off the screen before I can jot them down. And so just keep putting them up there. So, mate, a question from Tackle World in Bowen. Is the TM165HW transducer good for what depths?
So it's a good question. The high wides, realistically, you'd probably, most high frequency transducers, it's less than 200 meters. But with the wide angles, they tend to not penetrate quite as deep either. So I'd probably say 150 meters and less. But that product's really been designed for looking for a big piece of water column. And it's not really something you'd use to try and track the bottom with so much. The high wides are typically pelagics. So, if you're looking for bait schools and marlin in the upper water column, under 100 meters in most cases with those kinds of fish, that's a good transducer for doing that with.
So Scott Selm, I finally got to your question, mate. So Scott's fishing the Gold Coast area. He's asking what transducer is best to use with his Evo3s and why.
So it depends a lot on the fishing. So if you're in close and the water's less than say 150 meters, just one of our low-cost skimmer transducers, a 5200 skimmer transducer, would see you pretty right. The thing with transducers is they're a lot like speakers. So the more you pay, the better quality you get. And so it's most of the time it's making that choice on what your budget is and what you're prepared to spend on your fishing. If you're somebody that has a real passion for it, we regularly see people fitting the TM275 LHW product. And again, if you're game fishing, that's a great machine because it gives you a nice wide high frequency swathe, but also lets you track the bottom with the low frequency down deep as well. So it's a good kind of all-round performer. If you're looking more at sort of reef fishing and that kind of thing, then you might be better to look at one of the narrow beam 200 kilohertz units. So in that case, say under 100 meters, you could probably just use one of our active imaging transducers. So that has a 83 and a 200 kilohertz element in it, as well as our side and downscan. And if you're fishing structure, that's where that product is really, really good. Reefs and 15 to probably 45 meters of water, that product is really well suited for that. So it just depends a little bit on where you're fishing and how you're fishing.
All righty. Now, Ben's asked where he can find a tech in Northern Tassie who can jump on the boat and help him with some of this stuff.
So the best thing to probably do is ring our technical support line. I can't remember off the top of my head all the guys that we do have as technical dealers. But if you ring our tech support line, they'll be able to help you out. Or in fact, on our website, we have a list of our certified dealers as well to reach out to.
All right.
But Bill Malone, one of my territory managers, is also he loves to have a chat with people. He regularly fishes over in Tasmania, and so he uses that as his conduit for watch fishing well.
All right. So Sam Corbin's asking, he's got an M260 1 kilowatt transducer, and over 350 it drops out even if it's going 50 kilowatts. Any key settings to change when it gets a lot deeper?
Yep. So sorry, did he say TM260 or M260?
M260.
Okay, so that's an in-hull machine. So what that means is it's mounted inside the boat and it's in a tank. And so it fires through that. So a big thing to remember there is to make sure that tank is full. So you normally use a marine safe antifreeze to fill those up. But unfortunately, the biggest thing with transducer performance is definitely their position. And with those in-hull mounted transducers, once they're fitted, that's as kind of as good as you're going to get. The one thing to try is trimming the boat differently. So trimming the boat nose or stern high, sometimes that can help the performance as well. So if you trim the motor in and out and take a look, that will sometimes help you out. The other thing to take to look at with something like that is probably something I'll show you in a little bit. which is our our color erase function. And what that means is what you can do is you can artificially increase your gain control and then clip out the unwanted noise using an erase function. So that's a little bit further through the slide pack, Greg, but I'll go into some detail with that.
Let me just unmute myself. So,
sorry. Oh, yeah, there we go. Just trying to work out my side of yours.
Yeah, no, again, too many buttons to press here. So Jeremy's asking, can the Evo3s do auto trolling speed with Mercury 250 SX Pro?
If it's got the DTS throttles, the digital throttles, and you've got a vessel link in there, then yes, you should have that function. So it depends a little bit on the throttles on the boat, whether it's a digital throttle sets. If it does, and you've got the vessel view link installed on the boat, then you should be able to do your trolling control.
All right. So Abra's asking, he's got an Evo 3 with 175 HW. What are the best settings to find kingfish in reefs and weed beds?
Alrighty. So I think a lot of it depends on conditions, but if you leave the gain in auto and you've got your color line set probably just a touch higher than 76, maybe 77, 78, that's going to get you into a pretty good position. You might just need to do some small fine tuning on the gain control depending on the water clarity, and if you're over like rock fall or breaking water, sometimes you'll get a bit of aeration in the upper water column. And so to combat that, again, that's where that color erase function can be quite helpful. That'll help remove some of that. And there's also another feature that I'll talk about shortly called TVG as well, time variable gain. That's another important one if you do have some slightly more challenging conditions.
All right. Question from Danny Lee up here in Cairns, one of my compatriots up here. So just ordered an NSS12 Evo 3s, wondering what transducer you'd recommend for fishing in 30 to 80 metres for reef species out of Cairns.
So to start with, I'd recommend just using an active imaging 3-in-1 transducer. That will give you your side scan, and that'll give you a high and a medium frequency. And it's a great little, I guess you'd say, starting out package. If you've got a slightly larger budget, then you could start to look at one of the TM, maybe a 165, something like that would be helpful. But if you're specifically looking at reefs, then a 5200 HDI would also be another option. But again, if it's a trailered boat, you might want to look at an NSSevo3s, which is the high frequency narrow beam transducer. But definitely what I would probably do is the transom mount active imaging that we have is a great place to start. And it won't blow your budget. It'll let you get used to the product, and you can check out the performance using that product. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Peter Mao, is there a through-hole transducer in 1 kilowatt that'll do low and high wide? He's got
yes,
an
there is.
175. I've just lost that.
Yeah. So there is a SS275 LHW as well. And so that is a through-hole unit. It's not flush to the skin like a 175. It does have a fairing block, so it sticks down from the boat. There is a transom mount version of that as well, the TM275 LHW. So there are a few options, but it will depend a little bit on how you're able to mount it onto the boat.
Awesome. Okay. So Doug Reed, he's got an S5100. He'll be adding, I'm sorry, Doug, I got halfway through that and it disappeared off the screen. Can you please post it again, mate? And I'll make sure that I get through it before it disappears. Yash is asking, is the 3D unit suitable for chasing pelagics in deeper water?
Depends what you're saying about deeper water. So the StructureScan 3D, realistically, 75 to 100 meters of water depth, it's going to be struggling to mark anything beyond that. But if you're just using it to search that upper kind of water column, so to speak, maybe 80 meters and below, it's okay. It's primarily designed for shallower water work though. So 5 through to 35 meters, that's where it would really shine. You get out to 45 and it's still pretty capable. So if you're looking for water column targets that are in that sort of upper 60 meters, then using that would be okay. But if you're more focused a little bit deeper than that, then you'd need to look at a more traditional sonar to do that.
All right.
And that's where those high wides are quite good.
Sam Corbin's asking what the best trailer boat transducer would be for chasing marlin in hull or transom mounted. That's for a trailer boat.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Both come with goods and bads. To be honest, most of the time with a trailer boat, sort of 7 to 8 meters or even a little bit less than that, I'd probably go with transom mount. And the reason I say that is it just gives you a little bit more flexibility with getting it right. With the through holes, you need to be really sure that you're mounting it in a really good position. Transom mount's a little bit more forgiving because obviously you can sort of take it on and off. You can move it up and down. And so it's probably a safer option, so to speak, is to have a transom mount. The only downside with transoms, obviously they're nearby to the outboard or the stern leg if you've got a leg, and that's a noisy piece of equipment in the water, and so you might have a small performance decrease. But 90% of the guys that I know will just run a TM unit because it's easy to fit. And they do have some flexibility with positioning it.
All right. Jake is asking, what's the best transducer for the S2009 without running a S5100 when fishing in depths from 20 to 500 meters? 20 to 500.
So probably a Diplex TM260 would be a good option there. So the 260s, they actually do have 2 element packs inside them, but they have a thing called a diplexer, which allows a single point of connection, which is important on the S2009 because it's a single channel. So that would be probably my recommendation on that would be a TM260.
Okay, we've got Jason back. He's still inside, so the banging on the doors worked. He's got a Simrad 2016, probably the first in Australia to have it. Fitted with a TM185HW, great in Port Phillip Bay, but no good in the dark or early morning. So being a charter operator, he's blind until the sun comes up. The main reason, let me just scroll through a bit here.
Yep.
So he wants to know, he's going back to the original P66 at 50 kilowatts for shallow, and it works well. He's asked experts, but he's got no help. Is he doing something wrong? Mate, what I'm going to do, it's a fairly lengthy question. I might just copy and paste that somewhere and send that to Matt to address later on.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting one too. Sometimes, with the early morning or evenings, you obviously do get changes with thermoclines and plankton and that kind of thing as they move up and down in the water column. And it might be attributed to that, but some screenshots or sonar logs would be super helpful to try and help with that.
Okay, so Parnesh is asking, he's got an Evo3 with 1 kilowatt transducer TM275. What do you recommend him to set up to enhance this combo? What depth it would be good to? What will you be able to see?
So I've personally used that transducer out and beyond 800 meters. But again, it depends on the mounting location on the boat. That's a critical factor with all the transducers, is making sure it's in a nice clean piece of water and it's got the right angle on it. And that's the best thing you can do to get performance. After that, some of those features that I talked about with gain and color control, it's just making some small adjustments to those, and you'll find that you can probably get things working pretty nicely.
Okay. Matt Heels is asking, what's the Downscan overlay and how do you use it?
Yeah, so Downscan overlay is it's kind of been replaced. So what we used to do with Downscan overlay was take our. In fact, I'll show you on screen. One moment, I'll just pop my unit up. And I will just take a look. So I've just turned it on there. So effectively what it's doing is taking our Downscan sonar image and laying it on top of our traditional echo sounder. Now, what we've actually worked out is there's a better way to do it, and it's actually to do it the other way around. And so what that looks like is this, which is our fish reveal function. And so what we do with fish reveal is we take our high definition bottom imaging and display that alongside with our two-dimensional sonar. So what I'm trying to do here is just make it a little bit more obvious. It should help. So we've got our really high definition bottom imaging, so we can see all the little lumps and bumps. But then what we've done is we've taken all the fish targets from our traditional two-dimensional sonar and laid it on top of this as well. So it gives us a much better idea of what the bottom shape and contours are, but helps really highlight those fish targets and make them really pop out. So if you've got Downscan on a boat, that's what I'd actually recommend doing, is making sure you got our latest software release in the machine, and that'll give you this Downscan kind of overlay replacement, which is called Fish Reveal. And it's a really cool tool, actually. And again, there are some depth limitations with it, probably under sort of 50 to 60 meters. Is where it'll really work for you. So if you're reef fishing in 15 to 25, it's a real weapon.
We've got questions just flooding in, but we've also got a few people who have commented they're pretty keen to see the rest of the presentation. So
yeah,
what I'm going to suggest, guys, is keep sending those questions in. We might stop and answer a few more a bit further along the way. Matt, I think I'm pretty safe in saying that anything that's posted on the Simrad page, you guys can answer later if it's not answered during the live stream.
Yeah, 100%. I'll make sure that we're over that tomorrow.
Yeah, and anything that's posted on other pages, I'll make sure that it's forwarded on to you guys so you can comment on that as well. So, guys, keep posting the questions. Hopefully we'll get through as many of them as we can. But those that we don't get through, we'll answer later on. So keep posting them up. Matt, I'm going to switch on the screenshots again, mate, so you can go through your presentation.
Easy. Thanks, Greg. So I did mention a setting before called TVG, or time variable gain. Now what that does is compensates for the fact that targets that are up close to the transducer will stand out more than one that is further away. And it's just like if you think about yelling at somebody, if they're standing next to you, they get an earache. If they're 100 meters away, they'll only just hear you. And that's the same with what TVG does. So what we do there is we reduce the amount of gain for targets that are close and enhance it for ones that are further away. So it kind of evens it out more regularly for you. And so what that will do, just from a real obvious perception, is if you've got lots of noise in the water, like if you see at the top left-hand corner of this image, by increasing the TVG, what we're doing is reducing the amount of gain up close and tidying up the clutter that we start to see in the surface. So the reason that this is so messy is because when we're doing this testing, we were running over the top of our own wake. And so by doing that, there's lots of bubbles and air in the water, and that stands out really obviously. And by increasing our TVG, it just cleans all of that up for us. And it won't get rid of, if there is a good sized target up close, you'll definitely still see it, even with a TVG value that's set relatively high. If you've got a nice quiet boat that doesn't have a lot of turbulence over the transducer, then you can just leave the TVG value down lower. But it's a great tool for cleaning up that surface clutter. Alrighty. Scroll speed. So on our machines, what we do is we allow you to adjust the rate at which the image scrolls across the screen. And there can be a couple of different sort of purposes for that. So on the left-hand side of the left image, you'll see a normal scroll speed, and you can see these nice big fish arches in here. Then what we've done after the black line is increased our scroll speed. And what that does is it'll stretch the targets out and kind of elongate them. If you're moving really quickly, increasing the scroll speed can help kind of stretch out targets and make them perhaps a little bit more obvious to you. And conversely, we've also got scroll speed which is lower, and what that will do is bunch the targets up and make them a little bit more dense. So basically, on the left-hand side, we've got ×3. For every ping, we're moving 3 pixels or 3 steps across the screen. On the other side, we're only moving across 1 for every 3, so it makes the image more dense and more condensed. So again, depending on your boat speed or the terrain that you're moving over, you can make those adjustments. Normally, to be honest, I just leave this in normal. I don't find a lot of purpose for making changes to this one. The next one is ping speed. So ping speed, again, realistically, I set it to max and leave it there. And effectively what that does is it will fire the transducer as rapidly as it possibly can for the depth of water that you're in. So if you're in really shallow water, it means it can fire really, really rapidly, because the time that it takes for the transducer to fire the sound signal down to the bottom and back up is really short. So it's able to do that really, really rapidly. When you start moving into deeper water, that ping speed will definitely slow down, because it takes longer for the sound to go all the way to the bottom and back up again. Where you might want to use some manual controls is in deeper water. You can reduce the ping rate a little bit, and that'll allow the energy and the burst to be slightly higher. Or if you start to see what we call bottom wrap or phantom ping, and what that can be is, again, in deeper water, what you might start to see is a second image of the bottom appearing in the midwater. And so reducing your ping speed can help reduce that for you as well. But yeah, again, most of the time, just leave it in max, and you'll be in for a win. Color palettes. So again, we've got lots of different options. Again, people have different preferences about the contrasting colors. My personal preference is screen color 4 or palette 4, and that's just because of what I'm used to with the Simrad Kongsberg product that I used to work with a number of years ago. But at night, these ones 2 and 3 and also 5 can be quite good, because it reduces the amount of glare from the screen. Obviously, the screens are really, really bright. We can adjust the brightness on them really easily. But if you're sort of worried about losing your night vision, then using these darker backgrounds can help you out. You'll also see at the bottom there's an option that says bottom coloring, and I'll show you what that does. So I'll just pop my screen back over here again. And effectively what that does for us is just fills in anything that's below what we call our bottom line. So I'll just turn it Downscan overlay off, and I'll go to palettes, and I'll turn on bottom coloring. And so you'll see there what it's done is basically colored in anything that's below the bottom line for us. So it can be quite helpful if you are trying to track down fish that are hard on the bottom, and you're trying to pick them up from any of the kind of structure that's on there. It makes it very obvious, where the bottom is versus where the fish targets are. There's also an option in here called depth line, which helps you with that, and that'll draw a marker along the bottom as to where the sounder thinks that the bottom starts and finishes. Okay, I'll just move on from here. Advanced A scope. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is something that is a little bit unique to Simrad. And we've put this in here, again, based on a little bit of feedback from people on wanting to be able to really fine tune their sounder. And so a traditional A scope definitely helps with what we'd call a sort of a real-time image of what's happening under the boat. So with a normal sounder, everything that's to the left here is history. This is all something that happened in the past. With the A scope, what that lets you do, and I'll just turn on what we'd call our regular or normal A scope, is it shows you exactly what's under the boat right at that instance. So you can see here these fish targets that are forming through the left. You see them in the water column. Okay, you see the ones up the top here. So that's every ping that's going down. This is the return that we're getting back. So you get this kind of really instantaneous image. So that's super helpful. If you're trying to keep an eye on things as they pass under the boat. And as a dad with kids on board, often what I'll do is I'll miss something on the A scope, but then I'll pick it up in the history later on, which is obviously out to the left. What we've done with advanced A scope is brought a little bit more information in for you. And so what I'll try to do is show you what that what that is. So what you're looking at here are all of the signals that are coming back to the sounder, even the ones that aren't being displayed on screen. So everything in grey is something that we don't class as being strong enough of a return to mean that it's a target. So you sort of say, well, okay, that's great, but what does that actually do for me, Matt? What it does for you is when you adjust your gain control, what you'll see now is the black line will start to move. So as I decrease gain, you'll see that that line gets higher and higher. So what that means is the targets that are coming through have to be of much higher strength before they start to show up. If I take it the other way, you'll see that line starts to drop down. And so now anything that breaks that line is being shown as a target. So it just allows you to get an idea for how noisy the boat is and how noisy the conditions are, and make some fine tunes on your gain control. Yeah, so it's just it's really just there as a tool to help you with your fine tuning. And then we have our color mark and erase functions. So these ones allow you to choose a specific target strength and mark it in a different color or bunch several colors together. So it can be super helpful. The mark option could be great for finding particular target densities or strengths. And that might be that you're trying to find some of the bigger fish in amongst bait schools and that kind of thing. They might not stand out quite as obviously. And so by choosing that marker color, and there's lots of different options you can choose with that, you can really make some of those targets stand out. So again, I'll just show you what that looks like from a live perspective. And that's just in our options menu here. Down towards the bottom, you'll see color marker. And I'm going to use this nice iridescent pink color for all my high density targets. So you can see down the bottom here now, the bottom color stays the same, but the fish targets now, anything that's a strong signal return is now showing up in this bright pink color. So again, it just helps a little bit with being able to identify you know, what is a really strong signal mixed amongst some weaker ones. The flip side of that is erase, and that's the ability to be able to knock out colors if you're wanting to you know, reduce a little bit of the target clutter on screen. Again, what you might notice here is this might look a little bit familiar to guys that have had sounders in the past. In the past, a lot of sounders only had 8 or 16 colors, and so you would have been perhaps more, what should we say, comfortable with a reduced palette. And so that's what this erase function does. So it allows you just to make some adjustments. If I increase our gain value here, you'll see we're still not getting into those light blues. If I take that up to gain, let's say 6, we just start to see some of them coming in here now. And I'll show you what difference that makes as I turn those on and off. So if I start turning those off, you'll now start to see that the screen will get really flooded with different colors. So it just means that you can kind of choose particular color ranges that you might like to remove out of the picture. Again, it's more of a feature that was found on commercial products. Cool, and there's just some other screenshots of those. The last thing that I had in here was our split. So being able to do what we call bottom lock or zoom functions. So bottom lock effectively will hold you hard on the bottom and just show you targets in this case in basically 5 or 6 meters from the bottom up. So you see 0 is the 0 marker for the bottom, and this is 5 meters above the bottom here. So what it does, it just zooms in on the bottom and keeps the bottom looking kind of flat, even if you're changing depths. All it's doing is just looking at you know, a section of the water 5 meters in this case above the sea floor. So that's the bottom lock. The other option we have is a zoom. So again, this can be quite useful if you're wanting to search a particular piece of water for targets. And that might be if you're trolling for marlin or something like that, you're wanting to track the bottom still, but you're wanting to kind of blow up a particular area on screen. So in this case, again, I'll bring it up so I can show you what I mean exactly. Just pop this back over here. Just bring that gain down a touch. So what I'm going to do here is zooming in. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm actually focused on a particular piece of the water column, and you can see that blue section is the area that I'm looking at. So I've magnified the area in that box by 3 times. So I can still track the bottom at 25 meters in this case, but what I'm really paying attention to is the water between effectively 5 and 15 meters here. And I'm blowing up any targets that come through there to make them really obvious. So if you're fishing really deep and you're wanting to keep an eye on what's happening in the upper water column, this is a great way to do it. You can just take a wee look and look up in the upper water whilst keeping an eye on the bottom at the same time. Alrighty, Greg, I reckon we're probably up for some questions now. Oh, I think you're on mute again, bud.
Catches me every time. That thing catches me every time. I keep turning it off so you guys are not listening to my mouse clicks and keyboard ticks as I'm trying to keep up with things. But lots of questions here, mate, so I'm not going to run out anytime soon. So a couple from Jack to start us off. So Jack's asking if there's an upgrade that we can get that allows us to have more than 2,000 waypoints on the Simrad app. And he's also asking, he's also asking what you'd suggest for a traditional mounted downscan forward of the outboard on the stern.
Okay.
Just for a traditional mounted downscan module forward of the outboards on the stern.
Forward of the outboard on the stern. So we do have some through-hole units that'll allow you to do that. So we have what we call an HDI through-hole. And that has a downscan element built into it. And so that's one of the ones that you'd basically drill a 51 millimeter hole through the boat and then flush mount it up. So that's definitely one way you can go. With the active imaging 3-in-1s, I have seen people screw them to the bottom of the boat. I wouldn't recommend it. Again, we do have a through-hole kit for those. What that does require, though, is a boat that doesn't have center rollers. Because you can't have the trailer rollers on the face of those transducers. It'll damage it. But if it's on wobblies or something like that, where you don't have a set of keel rollers, that's definitely one way to go. The other part too, just about the waypoints. So I'm kind of interested to know whether he means the Simrad app or whether he means on the head unit itself. But maybe he can
question word for word, and maybe it'll make more sense to you. So, is there an upgrade we can get that allows us to have more than 2K waypoints on our Simrad app?
Okay, I think he maybe is talking about the new Simrad app, and it is something that that we're constantly working on at the moment. So I would expect that the number of captured waypoints will increase over time as we get our synchronization and filtering and sharing options a little bit more refined. Yep.
All right, guys. Now I know there are a heap of questions came through while Matt was going through his PowerPoints. Facebook's not being kind to us, so I can only see 4 at a time. It won't let me scroll down and see the ones that have already been through. So if you have asked a question that hasn't been answered, please pop it up there again. Keep an eye on the pages. Danny Lee's asking if we've got any recommendations for someone in Cairns to fit a transducer for him to a 490 Renegade. Danny Lee, I don't, because I haven't had to have one fitted in Cairns. Perhaps Matt does, but if not, I'd suggest perhaps get in touch with Simrad on their Facebook page after this.
Yeah. Or even on our Simrad website. If you go on there, there's a dealer locator, and that'll help you a little bit as well. Or, again, like I said, if you ring our 1300 number, have a chat with our tech support team, they'll be able to point you in the direction of a good guy to have a chat with. Yep.
So Robert Attunes has asked a couple of questions. One is he's wondering if you're going to incorporate sea surface temperature as an overlay in the future.
100%. I'd love to be able to do it right this minute. So actually, in the US, we actually have a satellite service that that does bring that in from a WX weather company. It is definitely something that we want to be able to do without too many delay. But what I can show you is actually a feature that is in the machine that'll kind of let you do it yourself. So on the charting page, you'll actually see an option to be able to turn on a coloured trail, and the trail will change based on the water temperature. So the trail behind the boat will change colour as you go through warmer or cooler water. So if you are searching for those hot zones, that can be a great little way to do it. You'll see the colour of your trail actually change as you move through a warmer or cooler patch of water.
Cool. Sam's asking whether it's possible to overlay SST maps to the charts daily.
Yeah, it's not something we've got on the machines now. Like I said, one thing I have done in the past is I might have downloaded something like that and just saved it as an image file, and then I've just taken it with me and put it on the machine and just displayed it once I've been out on the water. But definitely having sea surface temperature is something that we'd really like to get, especially from a third-party supplier that gives us a nice big satellite map.
Matt, Peter Mau's asking, is there a way to get screen captures onto the phone without putting the SD card into the computer via the app, perhaps?
Yeah, I actually, and this has caught me off guard a little bit, but I actually thought we had the ability to do that with the app. I haven't got mine tethered to this unit that I've got on the desk with me, but I can definitely find that out for you and let you know for sure. I was fairly sure we could do that actually, is transfer image files back and forth, but I will find out.
Okay, as I said, guys, the questions are coming through faster than we can answer them, so anything that's unanswered at the end of this session, the guys at Simrad will get back to you via Facebook or email or whatever and answer your questions. So what have we got here? Can configuration, says Ben Darby Jones, so can configuration settings, such as the source, be saved to allow you to play around and not lose your optimum settings?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I'll show you how to do that, because that's a really easy thing to actually do. So if you've just got your machine running, just go to your home page. If you go down to your storage area, click on that. And once you've got everything set up the way you want it set up, if you just hit this one here that says Settings Database, what it's doing now is asking you where you want to save that to. Now, I'm just going to save it onto my machine. And I'll just choose My Files and go OK. And in here, I'm going to go Settings, hot fishing. Number 1. Cool. And what that's done now is saved everything that I've got currently configured on my machine to that settings area. And I guess the good part about that is I can come back at a later date to recover that if I want to, or take a look at it. And you'll see there it says exported complete. You can save it to a memory card as well if you want to take it away with you. And in fact, there's a number of Coast Guard units and volunteer marine rescue guys that each skipper will have their own configuration that they save. So if I want that back now, I just do the same thing. So if I just go to my home page, scroll down to storage, choose My Files. If I scroll down, you'll see one in there now that says Settings Hot Fishing 1. I press on it and I just hit import. Okay, and it will bring in all of those settings that I just saved and set the machine up the same way. So it's a great way to kind of run a backup, I guess you will. All it does is the settings. It doesn't back up waypoints or anything like that. There are other ways to do that, but yeah, if you're wanting to have specific settings that you've really fine-tuned, this is a really easy way to do that. Cool.
All right, bring us back on the screen. So another question from Robert. He's asking what TVG setting is best for deep water.
So with the TVG, if you're primarily focused on the bottom, the TVG value won't have much of an effect for you. Realistically, it's focused at cleaning up the upper part of the water column. So if you're out deep, having it set on 0 is as good as having it set on 3, to be honest. If you're focused on the bottom, it won't have a huge effect on the performance. If you're doing a bit of both, so you might be running out wide, and you just wanted to keep an eye on any bait fish on the way out, I'd probably set it at TVG 3. But every boat's going to be slightly different, and so it's just a matter of making that change and seeing what suits the boat.
All right, just bear with me a moment as I try and scroll through. Daniel Fleming's asking, do electric reels affect the Eco 3 if you hook the reel straight to the battery?
It shouldn't do, and I say that as it's unlikely. But again, depending on the type of reel, how much current it's drawing, whether or not you're supplying the display unit from the same battery, all of those things can play into it. If you are getting interference, again, that's where those ferrite suppressors might be one way to go, or to try and look at some way of isolating it. Even if you're running a separate battery just for your reels or something, that's one way to look at it. But those ferrites normally do a reasonably good job of helping with that kind of thing. But you wouldn't be able to tell until you tried it, I guess, is the outcome of that.
Okay, so Mikhail's asking, you mentioned earlier specific frequencies. What, if any, would you use for deep dropping?
Low. So that's definitely the place to start. So depending on the transducer type, so if you're using one of the 275s, they'll run down to 45 kilohertz and up to about 65, I think it is. So normally what I'd start with is actually just low chirp, and see how that runs. And then I would take it into a fixed frequency and just see whether or not I see any real performance difference. So if you run over a set of targets on low chirp, and then bring the boat rack around and set it up for a specific frequency, maybe 45, and then try and run back over that same target area, and just see whether or not the targets pop up. So by reducing the frequency, what kind of happens is you're getting a little bit more energy into each burst. And so you typically will get a little bit more reflection. But in saying that, some fish species, and depending on their size, will actually resonate with the frequency that you're transmitting, and so that will make them stand out even more. So yeah, I've heard a few different stories from a few different fishermen about specific frequencies that they use. They would cut me into little pieces and use me as fish meal if I talked about it too much. But yeah, definitely try using the lower frequencies if you're not seeing really good target returns on a like on 50 kilohertz, for instance. Just try dropping it down a little bit and taking another go. On the big transducers, on the 3 kilowatt units, they'll run down to 28 kilohertz. And so again, that's just one of those things that you can just slowly make those adjustments. If you've seen a target, take the opportunity to run back over it a couple of times with a couple of different frequencies, and that's the best way to kind of find the best fit. And then if you're lucky enough to bring one up, that might give you a little hint and something to write down, or if you mark a waypoint on it. When you mark a waypoint with our machines, there is an option to add notes, and that's where I'd probably do that. I'd say, marked on 38 kilohertz, or something like that, and that's a great way just to keep that in the back of your mind for the next time you're out there.
Okay, Greg Budd's asking about Simrad dealers in Cairns. Greg, I believe Markwell or Whitworths. I don't know.
There's a bunch of guys. I think there's Bill's Marine as well, are really good guys. But yeah, there's a few dealers there. I'd probably just go and have a chat with each of them and just see what response you get. I do know the guys from Bill's do a great job, and they've got a pretty good reputation, I believe, in Cairns as well. But yeah, best thing to do is just to strike up a relationship, right?
Theo's asking, he's got an NSSevo3. What's the best transducer for depths from 50 to 100 meters?
Yeah, so again, that active imaging transducer is a great place to start. It's a relatively low-cost transducer, and it will get you, in those shallower depths. It'll do a pretty good job for you. If you've got a slightly bigger budget, you could probably look to move to one of the 165s, or if you've got a slightly bigger budget, then you go to a 1 kilowatt. And again, that's where that 260, 275s are really, really good. Or a 185 medium is another really good one. That'll cover a fairly wide depth range as well.
All right. Now, folks, Facebook is getting even less and less friendly, and I'm not even able now to like some of these messages as they're being answered, and they're disappearing off the screen really fast. So we might start to wrap this up. We have still got a lot of questions coming through, but we have had Matt online for quite a while. It's getting quite late in New Zealand, and we are starting to struggle with technology a little bit. So, folks, what I'm going to suggest is I'll keep this live stream open for a little bit, so you can add a few more questions to the feed, or come along if you're viewing it afterwards, watching a replay. Feel free to put questions in the feed, particularly on the Simrad page. They will get answered. On the other pages, I'll make sure that your questions are forwarded on to Matt or the team at Simrad and Navico. So, Matt, I'm going to thank you for your presentation tonight. It's been fantastic. I only wish that I could have slowed down long enough to listen more intently and watch the screen and not been doing so many things at once. But it was terrific to get the insights that you've given us, and I'm sure you've helped a lot of people to get the most out of their Evo3. So thank you so much for coming along, and thanks also to obviously to Navico and to Simrad for getting behind these live streams and helping us to get out some great information to those guys who are wanting to use their electronics a little bit better. So thanks again, Matt. I'm going to let you go now, mate. Have a great evening. Thank you to everyone that came along, and we'll be back online in 2 weeks. I'm not sure what we've got lined up for you in 2 weeks, but I will let you know in due course on the appropriate Facebook pages, so stay tuned for that. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much, Greg. I had a great time. That's fantastic.
Perfect. Thanks, mate.